This quite possibly might be one of the worst polling results Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada have ever had in their 8.5 years in office. It's not just bad because they're far back in the polls. That's what all of the polls have been showing in the past few months. The problem for the Liberals is that it demonstrates that there's no ability for them to actually come back before the next election in a year and a half. This poll from Ipsos has the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre at 44%, the Liberals and Justin Trudeau at 25, and the NDP at 16. The reason that this is so devastating is because the NDP is collapsing at the same time the Liberals are collapsing. For the Liberals to be able to mount a comeback, they need the NDP to not be on life support. The NDP needs to be somewhat coming up in the polls so that they can hold down the Conservatives in the western parts of the country where the NDP is a little bit more viable. And then the Liberals need to be able to grow their support in Ontario so that they can hold on to most of the seats around the Toronto donut. That's not happening. And even the Bloc Québécois are still holding their support. So the Liberals are not going to be able to mine out more seats in Quebec. So Trudeau is what we colloquially call screwed. He doesn't actually have anything to win over voters with. He's been fear mongering about Pierre Poilievre. And usually you got to wait a little bit and see if the new narrative they're trying to spin is going to appeal to Canadians. It's been going on for like a year now. Everyone knows it's not working. Them saying that Pierre Poilievre is far right and he's hanging out with the far right and he wants to take away all government spending from these great programs we're running it's not working. Nobody thinks that Trudeau has the secret sauce to make the country better. You can't be in office for 3 terms and then say, guys, but if you give me a 4th term, everything's going to be utopia. I know everything sucks now, but it's just because you haven't elected me a 4th time. Eventually people have turned off of you. And although because I've door knocked a lot, and I am in a very conservative riding, shameless plug, I'm Wyatt Claypool and I'm running for the Conservative Party nomination in Calgary Signal Hill. So mark me number 1 on your ballot if you're a conservative in that riding whenever the nomination date is set. But in my riding, whenever I bump into people who don't like Pierre Poilievre, 1, it's extremely rare, and 2, they can't actually articulate why they even dislike Poilievre. With Justin Trudeau and conservative voters, they can fully articulate what they don't like about Justin Trudeau. Most of the time, when you ask someone, what don't you like about Justin Trudeau? The response I've gotten from literally hundreds of people is, do you have 2 hours? Because they can go through every single social, fiscal policy, foreign policy decision he's made and prove why anyone with an actual brain would not have done that unless they seemingly had contempt for the Canadian public. Justin Trudeau demonstrates that he doesn't really like Canadians or share their values at all. He only cares about people who live in downtown Toronto and Montreal, and that's what's alienated so many people. It's not that just that he's a bad prime minister, it's that he's a bad prime minister and doesn't really care that it's harming you. And this right here is another polling result that I think demonstrates why the Liberals are not going to be able to claw their way back. This one from the Narrative Research poll that also recently came out. The question was, compared to the average Canadian, I am 61% of people say less wealthy, 25% say equally wealthy, and 14% say wealthier. And although that's not a super shocking result in the sense that obviously you're not going to have most people saying that they're wealthier than the average, the fact that 61% of people, the majority, think they are less wealthy than the average Canadian proves that people are in sort of despair at this point. And it's hard to move people from despair to voting for you. People didn't like Trudeau before the 2019 election or the 21 election. That's why even Aaron O'Toole, as a very soft and weak Conservative Party leader, was still able to win the popular vote. There was just a lot of anti-Trudeau voters out there. The problem was in those 2 elections is that people didn't like Trudeau, but the policy decisions he had made had not fully come home to roost with all their negative consequences. So a lot of people were kind of allowing themselves to be pliable on the idea that, well, the Conservatives are actually a bigger risk because in a certain sense, a lot of the negative consequences of Trudeau's policies hadn't quite arrived. They have fully arrived. Unless Trudeau can somehow make the country better in a year and a half, there's not going to be the sort of voter who's willing to be swayed back. There's maybe voters who won't vote conservative and they'll stay home, but voters staying home doesn't actually win you the prime ministership of the country. And when people say, because I know people are going to say it, well, you can't trust the elections. There was foreign interference in 2021 and 2019. They're going to somehow cheat to win. You have to actually look at the last 2 elections. It's been kind of remarkable that Scheer didn't win and Aaron O'Toole didn't win, in the sense that they were kind of playing on easy mode, but because the Conservative Party at the time, I would argue, was very dominated by red Tory thinking, they ended up suppressing their own voter turnout because Justin Trudeau did not maintain or grow his support in 2019 or 21. In 2019, he actually lost like 800,000 votes that he had in 2015. And then in 2021, he lost like another 300,000 votes, and which is insane because that was an election where people had nothing better to do but follow politics because a lot of people were stuck at home in lockdowns. It's just that Aaron O'Toole and Scheer before that just inspired people so little that even though Trudeau was losing votes, he was still able to hold on to a minority government. I don't exactly blame Scheer as much as I do O'Toole because I think Scheer was effectively being bullied by many of the people who've been expelled from the Conservative Party into acting more liberal, which killed off a lot of his appeal. Because when people identify a problem with the incumbent government, that Trudeau is awful at his job, we need something different, you don't say, well, I'm going to trim around the edges and make his bad policies better. Why would people come out and vote for that? Because even if they work hard, they donate, they volunteer, or they just simply show up and vote at the polls, what were they going to vote to make things 5% better? No, people want full fat reform. People want the reforms to be made good and hard, and so that we can reverse the issues, not make the issues a little bit less impactful. That's why in British Columbia, nobody's voting for the United Party, because the United Party does not actually represent real change from the BC NDP. That's why the Conservatives out in that province, provincially, have all the momentum, even though that party effectively didn't exist a year and a half ago. People vote for what they want, and what they want is real change. United cannot put together any sort of marketing, like narrative type push. They can't spend enough on advertisements to convince people that they're the ones who should be running the government. That's the funny thing, is money in politics doesn't nearly have as big of an effect as people think. Michael Bloomberg proved this with flying colors in the 2020 Democratic Party primaries, where he spent close to $1 billion and got absolutely nowhere. I think he came in 6th place in terms of electoral votes, and he dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into Super Tuesday states. The difference was, in that primary, Joe Biden was considered the safe option that Democrats wanted to vote for. And I'm not taking an opinion on who was a good candidate, who's a bad candidate. I don't care. I'm not American. I don't vote in their politics, so it's not my job to care. But the theory was that so many people push is that, well, if someone has a big personal win, Tom Steyer in the same race didn't get any electoral votes to my knowledge. And that guy also spent like $500 million. At some point, you also have to be the people that voters naturally want. The money simply turns out the people who would have shown up for you in the first place. That's the problem with Trudeau. It doesn't even matter if they launder money through a Arrive scam in order to get some more campaign spending money. They're not going to be able to turn out anyone because the base of people they have available to turn out is nothing. That's what effectively polls show. Polls are not votes, but polls demonstrate that 44% of people are very reachable for the Conservatives. 25 for the Liberals, 16 for the NDP, 8 for the Bloc, 3 for the PPC, and 2 for the Green Party. But if you don't have the money, you can't turn them out. The Conservatives have the money, and they have a large wealth of support in order to draw from for votes on election day. The Liberals are broke and have no money, and all of their campaign strategies, all of their governing strategies right now are doubling down on the 25% they already have. That's a shrinking base over time, because the people that the Liberals keep playing to are the more radical orange Liberals who want extremely progressive policies, and it doesn't matter how badly the country is being affected by these bad policies, the solution is always to double down. And that's what the Liberals have been doing. Dental care, pharmacare, all these other subsidy programs, EV subsidies, it's all doubling down on the progressive base who believes that government spending can drive an economy forward. Like when Harper left office, I think public spending was like 35% of the economy. These days, it's like 44%. And when you adjust that by adding in private spending being spurred on by government spending through like subsidies, it's like more than half of our economy is now public sector operated or public sector influenced, which is effectively, in my mind, a socialist economy. And Canadians don't want that. It doesn't matter how much you say that Poilievre wants to cut things. 67% of people want cuts. It's actually more than the Conservatives even have in terms of the support in these polls. And 67% of people, which means there's other people in other parties reachable, 67% of people think we spend too much. That's crazy in Canada, where oftentimes people have very generous hearts and always think that more public spending will solve problems. These days, people know it doesn't, and they want less of it. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. you can donate to my legal fund in the description below. It's the Give, Send, Go link. Thank you to anyone who has given money to that. I'm fighting a billionaire developer in court for defamation against that he's claiming that the National Telegraph had conducted or whatever, even though he hasn't provided any evidence of defamation in 2.5 years. He's just dragging this out. It's a lawfare case. And then also, again, if you live in Calgary, Signal Hill, and are a Conservative Party member, make sure to vote for me #1 on your ballot so we can have an actual Conservative representing our riding. I'm not even kidding. An opposing camp put out an ad on social media bragging that when they were the Minister of Social Services in Alberta, they spent $10 million matching donations to food banks to get people the help they needed, even though they supported the crazy, strict lockdowns that ended up putting people into such bad economic straits, financial straits, that they needed those food bank services. Like, that is such a liberal play. You break someone's legs and then give yourself credit because you drove them to the hospital. That's effectively what you're saying. Hey, I helped get hungry people food after I made it so that they were hungry. Okay, man, whatever. I guess that's the brand that some people who are conservatives want to run on these days. But other than that, again, you can join the TNT Telegram channel in the description of this video below. TNT Telegram, it gives you all of our posts in chronological order, and I even post some other podcasts I go on there or other podcasts Daniel Boardman goes on, so you can always see what we're up to, whether it's on this channel or other channels, without having to rely on the algorithm showing you videos in your feed. Have a good one.